Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Nightcap Knowledge. Make sure you are following us on all social media platforms at Nightcap Knowledge on Facebook, at Nightcap Knowledge on Twitter, which is now Twitter or X, either one of them. Follow us on YouTube at Nightcap Knowledge. So we are so excited for tonight. Make sure you go ahead and put those kids to bed so you can put something on your head before you go to bed. So I'm yours truly, Tanya Boy Cannon. We got our own Mr. Magnificent in the house. Our other co-host, DJ George Chuck, is on remote. So if you have a chance to tune in, he'll tune in. So let's go ahead and get this show started. Y'all ready? We'd like to remind you, it's time for us to have some fun tonight. Shout out to, if you want to know more about me, go to www.tanyaboycannon.com. Hemp World South, no medical card needed. The only Mississippi first therapeutic hemp CBD relaxation lounge in Jackson, Mississippi. For more information you want to know about Hemp World South and all that's happening in Jackson, make sure you go to Epps Institute, healing the entire you. And baby, check out, listen, Chapter 4, my spot. You'll see me over there on Sundays and sometimes some other nights. Don't tell nobody, you know. Make sure you stop over there in New Orleans in the CBD and check out Chapter 4. Mississippi School of Health Services and Career. Begin your career in healthcare today. So you guys see the number, you see the website, log on to them and learn more about having a career in healthcare. Mississippi Black Pages Expo, Mississippi Black Business Expo, presented by Higher Purpose, is going to be on 11/11/13. Listen, I just love those numbers. But anywho, make sure you learn more about Mississippi Black Business Expo coming up at Tougaloo College. And we're going to keep on moving. Your voice matters at ALC. Be part of the conversation that drives policy and change. Early bird specials. Registration for the 52nd Annual Legislative Conference is available until September 5th. So even if we're past the deadline, you still can register. Make sure you follow them on social media to learn more about making your voice count. This Friday, Feel Good Friday. Give me a Friday that makes you feel good. Stop over, be healed and happy at Hemp World South. This Friday, Feel Good Friday. Mississippi Move, what is global warming and how it affects you at Tougaloo College on the 13th of September. Although it's past, we're still going to talk about that. Make sure you want to know more about it. So you follow Mississippi Move for more information. Coming up this next month, the second weekend of October 12th through the 15th, Tougaloo College Alumni Weekend. So many events happening on Thursday, October 12th, all the way to the 15th. Listen, make sure y'all tell me about it. I'm trying my best to get there, but my schedule has me booked, but I hope to see you all. Anywho, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get this show started. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. What's up, Mr. Mac?
TBC in the building. What is the
M,
business, man?
M. Man,
What
we are
is the
here.
business?
Wait, look, we got Tamika Gary in the comment section already. Good evening from everyone from Georgia, by the way, of Mississippi. What's up? How are you?
Georgia.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to sing that time. You got to get that added in your list.
Li-
Georgia.
Georgia, not Georgia, Georgia.
Georgia on your mind.
All day, all day. We want to make sure that y'all are welcome tonight to Nightcap Knowledge. Go ahead and follow us on Facebook, IG, and Twitter. Make sure you are sharing this podcast tonight because we're going to be talking about everything that we need to know about our children tonight. And we have one of the greatest pediatrician psychiatrists that I admire seeing on with us tonight. So go ahead and share right now. Share with your family and friends. Tell them put the kids to bed, and some may want their kids to come and sit and learn some things tonight, and that way open up the line of communication with families. So before we get into the show, Mr. Mack, we have you to go ahead on and tell us, give us our Mr. Mack's mental health minute.
So the show is this show is rated black and uncensored, real talk, real issues, real solutions. And the mental health minute for this week was talking about how to manage and how you deal with stress, right? And talk about things that you can do to help alleviate stress. And one is always the most simplest, sometimes the most difficult, is eliminate the source of stress. Either get away from the source of stress. Sometimes it could be the work environment, it could be the area where you live, it could be whoever, whatever it may be. But that sometimes is hard. So you create things that help you. We talked about, watching movies, comedy, laughter. You talk about what laughter is the best medicine. Talk about meditation, relaxation, and yoga to be able to stretch, to be able to get yourself in center and be at peace. We talk about exercise, being able to release that energy, to be able to physically do something to get that stress level down. We talked about, massage therapy, having that, being able to release some of the toxins to help with those muscles. Because sometimes when stress gets to a certain point, it affects you physically. You can feel it. You can feel it in your back. You can feel it in your neck. You feel it in your body. So we also talk about spiritually, staying grounded, having faith in yourself and your deity, and learn different ways. Journaling, another thing. Sometimes it helps to write it out, write it down. Um, and those are some of the things that we advise and say, hey, these are things that could simple things that can help you when it comes to managing and eliminating stress that's in your life. So that's all I have right now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mack, for the mental health minute. And a lot of those things I did today. So I can be a testament to, yes, they work. And I'm going to go ahead on and jump into the music and entertainment check in. Listen, I have seen so much happening in the music industries um, throughout the various outlets of it. But I feel what has really been rewarding to me is having discussions with my students about sound and talking about sound and learning different sounds. So I was on the road heading back in town yesterday, and I learned of this new artist. And I just saw that PJ Morton's going to be doing a show with her in Texas. I think it's Mieta. But I really enjoyed hearing her bring back, some of that old school R&B feel and vibe. So her and this guy named Sir that I had a chance to check out. So I'm excited to see how the music industry is really reaching back and paying homage. The guy October, I think it's something October. He has a song that you could tell influences and inflections of Marvin Gaye. So I just love how the music industry is getting back to the real sound of what music, how we were brought up on music, but also a lot of our elders are enjoying some of these sounds. So I'm excited to hear these new sounds, these new songs, but also be comfortable to have nostalgia while I'm listening. So shout out to all the artists who are doing great things in the music industry, even in the fashion world. Shout out! I don't know if y'all watch Project Runway All Stars, but I'm like a huge fan of fashion. Shout out to Bishme. That's not even my people, but Bishme, my people, won. So if y'all are watching any reality shows, listen, I know I'm not the only one. So shout out to Bishme who won Project Runway. Uh, All Stars 2023, a fashion guru. So make sure y'all go out and check that out. And of course, I mean, support your local artists always in your cities. Celebrate them, buy their music, buy their merch. I'm a local artist, so I get it. And I'm working on some shows right now for Jackson, Mississippi. So I'll be seeing y'all soon. So that's my music and entertainment check-in. If we jump to what's the groove with DJ George Chuck, the groove is DJ George Chuck is on site setting up for an event that ran over. So the groove is to be consistent in your visions and get it done. I guess, Mag, what you want to say on the groove?
Hey man, the brother's always creating the groove wherever he at, so we know he's working to make it happen. So, hey, we might talk about him a little bit because he's not here to defend himself. So that what happened. That
So
was happened.
so
Oh
let's
man.
we're gonna go ahead and get the show started with our guest because Dr. Lauren Tevabar has been waiting backstage, and I'm so excited. And we just want to make sure that families that are logged on, make sure you're sharing with your families and friends, telling them to jump on tonight's podcast. If they have any questions about their children or students, things that they would like to know, that they can put them in the comment section because Dr. Tevabar is here. And we're going to go ahead on and bring her in the room. Y'all give it up for Dr. Lauren Tevabar. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I love this space. So thank
Oh, awesome. Well, we love you. We love having you here. And I mean, I know we talked, you and I before the show, and I just it everything happens for a reason because I had a situation happen last week at school, and I was talking to one of our other in-house psychologists, and we were just talking about, hey, we want these things to happen. I said, but the thing is, school is in session now, and some parents are going through some traumatic situations. Some parents are just asking questions like, is there something wrong with my child? Why is my child not learning, this lesson fast enough? Why are they crying? And so the question, not the question, but the first thing I thought of, like, what is in the mind of a child? Because like I'm listening to my granddaughter now, she's in the room crying. I know she's annoyed because she received 3 shots today. She's 2 months. She can't tell her mom and her dad, I'm tired, my legs hurt, I'm sleepy. So I told them the best thing to do is to keep her close to you and just kind of give her a little gentle rock and just telling her, giving her calming words of or phrase like, I know, I'm so sorry. Just giving her those positive affirmations and mantras. So tell us about you. And we're so grateful to have you back.
Sure. Yes. So I am a pediatrician and child and adolescent psychiatrist. I am located right here in New Orleans. And I have been here for the last 10 years, almost 11 years, and really grew up in the Midwest. So I'm from the Chicago and Detroit areas and moved down here for residency and never left because I love New Orleans. And I also love the people of New Orleans. And I practice mostly in the areas of community and community mental health and community pediatrics, community child health. And also I have a, a clinic and one of the local community mental health clinics, as well as at Covenant House. And then I also am in our school based health clinics. And so I also supervise some of our trainees that we have at one of our local universities. And so I have my hands in a number of different pots. But my passion is families and children right here in the community setting. It's all varieties, and particularly youth and families who've experienced trauma, right? Because we have a lot of that goes on, um, and I see a lot of that and deal with a lot of that. So that's it in a nutshell.
I love it. And Mac, make sure you jump in if you have any questions. I'm always intrigued being an educator and not, qualified in diagnosis and being a specialist, but I am qualified as a mom and a nurturer, in that giving part. And so in my past, it was hard for me to separate some of those things from kids, behavior, because I'm like, the mama wants to hug you, but baby, you gotta go take a break from recess, so so those different things. So I'm always, grateful to learn new skills and techniques to use with kids. What do you what and I want to jump right into this question. What do you feel one of the major disconnect from this generation of youth, and I would say, where's the intergenerational disconnect with our kids and various generations? What do you feel that is?
Tell me a little bit more about what you mean in terms of differences in views of.
Well, differences in communication, where this generation, they're free to like just go off the hinges of using, profanity, ready to fight. Like it's almost as if they have this huge amount of rage and anger. And so where do you feel like that and I know you can't give like a broad, perfect answer, but in your practices, what have you seen that has possibly caused a lot of that intergenerational, meaning that if my daughter's 22, my son is 21, one of my students is 5 and felt comfortable to talk to me, whereas one of my teenagers didn't, whereas my adult kids felt like they couldn't talk to me. So what do you feel like that disconnect is?
Sure, and I always try my best to individualize it because every kid is different, right? Every family situation is different. Um, and a lot of times if you can get down to wherever they are, you can get a little bit more information, but just if we're talking about broad strokes and trying to generalize it, we have it's our kids are exposed to a lot more different things than they were, our like my generation perhaps, or the generation before, right? We have social media, we have huge amounts of um, access to different ideas, different images, visual images, um, than ever before. And all of that access is particularly if we're not having major conversations about it as they're intaking all of these different things, it has a big influence. We also have different family structures, slightly different family structures, right? So um, I think we've, especially in the Black and Brown communities, like we've had more intergenerational family structures where we have more than just the biological parents that are raising us, but it's even more so now, right? So we have grandparents that are doing a lot of the raising. We have parents who or primary caregivers who are different than biological parents for a number of reasons. It could be substance use, it could be mental health issues, it could be just they weren't ready to be parents, right? And so that changes the dynamic as to the level of communication, the ability to communicate and relate to a child on a particular level. So I think it's a number of different things. Yeah.
Yeah, I share that because I can think of one student whose grandmother or great grandmother, who's one of our beautiful school, villagers. And she makes sure when she walk into school, kids know her. And this child loves his grandmother. Like they are like this. And mom is present, dad is present, but him and his grandmother, and that really, inspires, it inspires. I'm also, admirable, grateful, because I know how I was with my grandmother when she was in the physical. And so to see that today with this generation of kids, it just makes me smile. And then it also makes me, just wish that whatever they have, other kids would have it with their families. So
And
it's
that's not like that, especially when you see it and as you're talking about, right? You have multiple layers of support, right?
yeah.
So if parents are in and active and engaged in life, and you have active grandparents and active
Hmm.
aunts and uncles and
Right.
and cousins, like that's a whole community of support that you have. versus other children who may not have that, right? They maybe just have one grandparent who's raising them and trying to do it, and trying to raise multiple other young people in the household, right? And not having that village or that community, because that's a lot of that time, that's the support that we need, right? Because if your child can't hear you, which a lot of times they can't, right? Because they can't hear their parent in the same
Right.
way as they can hear another trusted adult or caregiver in their life. Then they can go to somebody else and they're hearing it, and they're getting that reinforcement, right? So you need it
Mhm.
from multiple avenues, and it's a beautiful thing when it's present, because it does work.
Why do you think it's hard for children to hear from that support that they live with, mom, dad, grandmother, versus the teacher, versus the lunch lady? Why do you feel that there may be a disconnection?
Yeah, I think it just has to do with with your um, our natural developmental stages, right? We are hardwired to, at once we get to certain points, and that's why we have to talk about it like at different ages and stages too, because when we're like that young age, so elementary school age, preschool age, the primary role of the parent and the caregiver is to give that love, that guidance, that support, but also the boundaries, those structures, right? And so that's the foundation for having getting that routine in place, of setting boundaries, of having that child listen to you or see you as a disciplinarian, a loving disciplinarian. But so that's okay when they're young. As they get older, their natural um, tendency, teenagers, is to become independent, right? So they're going to be like pulling away. They're going to be pushing boundaries. They're going to be challenging their primary authority figures, and that part, it just can be normal, right? And but that doesn't mean that we pull away as caregivers, or have different expectations for them. We still have to have high expectations of them, to be able to, right, meet whatever goals that they have for themselves and that we have for them. But that is just the nature of it, right? There's nothing. I always tell my parents, there's nothing wrong if your kid is not telling you everything, right? If they're not telling you, and even sometimes it can be what seems to be very, very important things, especially in the mental health field, right? Like if your kid is having, like, the one of the most serious things is thoughts about harming themselves, if they haven't told you that, right? Um, that's that's not to be, you don't disparage yourself as a parent for because your child didn't feel comfortable telling you that, because uh, they know your expectations of them. They don't want to hurt you sometimes. They don't want to lose your respect. They don't want to be, especially if sometimes we can be a little bit punitive in nature. They don't want you to come down hard. They fear that you're going to come down hard on them, or that they're gonna get in trouble. And so, then sometimes they just have another trusted caregiver or person or adult in their life that they feel they can open up to a little bit more, and that's okay. Yeah, our goal
Okay.
is to have one or two trusted adults, or old, people who is a good force in their life, so that they can open up to. It doesn't need to be the primary caregiver. It like we there's many studies that show, and then we just know by experience, that one or two positive, invested caregivers or adult people, teachers, community members in a child's life can really make a huge difference in how that child's trajectory, like how they turn out. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's a great way of now looking at it, because I've had some kids to come to me and share some things, and I know for me it put me in a bind, because I'm like, I want to talk to your family, but it's like, and so I found a way to have the kid and their parent to communicate in the most natural way without revealing what the kid should have told the parent, so the kid was able to talk to their parent,
Yeah.
which was really good. And I was like, man, where did that skill come from? What is that called? I don't know, but I love it
Yeah.
because it kept it.
And it's because it's about trouble, like you troubleshooting. You're helping the child
Yeah.
troubleshoot. Because remember, they're learning these skills. These are skills. These don't always come inherently to us, right?
Yeah.
How to communicate things when we're feeling like really stressed out or we're feeling really vulnerable or upset about something. Like those are learned things. Like
Yeah.
adults teach us these things about and other, there are other peers, if they have positive peer influences as well, they teach us
Yeah.
how to manage these difficult situations, right? And how to talk to our parents about stuff that's really hard, especially if there is a difference in terms of the relationship between the child and their parent, or different levels of, like, different authority
Yeah.
levels, the difference between an authoritarian parent, or like, just those are all styles that are
Yeah.
okay, but kids need help in navigating how to communicate sometimes. And so that's excellent. That's an excellent way to do it, right? You serve as a
Awesome.
mediator. You're not telling someone secrets for them, but you're
Right.
helping them to share in their own way what they need to share with the people who need to know.
Yeah. Awesome. That's so if a parent has a question, because I've had friends who asked me questions like, does my child supposed to do this? Is this normal? Should they be reading this way? I feel like the teacher said this and ain't nothing wrong with my child. I know ain't nothing wrong with him. When how does a parent what would you advise parents who have been questioning or have been dealing with the stress of hearing the teacher say something versus what they feel they know is not true, but then they begin to see these things with their kids? How do you encourage parents to get the support for their children that they need, although they may feel like I don't believe they need it, but I'm gonna do it?
Yeah. And so I would just ask, okay, so what is it that the teacher or the school professional is telling you? Like, really ask for details about it. Are you concerned about my child's behavior? Are you concerned about their learning in terms of their reading, writing, their math skills, their academics in general? Which areas are you concerned about? And then get really specific. Okay. So, and I think in general, if you ask more specifics, then you can get more specifics, and then you can ask for, okay, so what is it that makes you feel this way? What is the evidence? And then also, what is your background, right? The person who has said that they have identified as something. What's your background? How many years have you been doing this, right? Are you a brand new teacher? We love brand new teachers, but sometimes they don't pick up things, or they may pick up something that an older teacher may know that, oh, we give that a little bit more time, then we'll be able to see for sure what's going on with that child. So you want to ask the qualifications, the credentials, and then how they know, like why are you asking this, or why are you saying this about the child, and just be really curious, not in a defensive way, but just a really curious manner. I'm really curious as to why you feel this is, because I haven't noticed this at home, or I have noticed, these are things that I have noticed at home. And it can be more of a dialogue, back and forth about, what's going on, at school. Um, and the other thing is to look at how they're doing academically. Like when somebody comes in, like I'm always asking, okay, what are your grades, right? Because if most children should be able to get A's, B's, and C's, right? They should not be getting D's and F's and failing things, right? That's a red flag, and that's why. And I always tell parents, each interim report, right? Then look out for those things. Don't wait till it gets till the end of the semester or towards the end of the school year. It's kind of too late once you get to those points to really start to do some of the things that will really make a difference. Because at the beginning, if there's, for instance, an academic concern or learning concern that's being brought up, we can do things right at the beginning that are more low hanging fruit, that are easier interventions to implement, to see if those things help. Things like sitting towards the front of the class to minimize distractions, really drilling down. Okay, are we having difficulty finishing the work in class? Or is it more of a homework thing? Like the work goes home and never gets finished, or maybe it does get finished but never gets turned in, right? So we have a so it and so really asking those details too. Like it, and then is it all subjects, or is it more reading type things or writing type things or math type things? Those are like our three main domains when we're talking about how a kid is doing in school, because they require different parts of our brain. And so you can excel in one but not be doing so well in the other, right? And there are different ways to get at that. Um, and asking too, has my child gotten any been able to utilize any services that are available? A lot of times schools do have tutoring services that are available, after school services, or the teacher can meet with them at lunch or things like that. Things to just help give better clarity as to where's the difficulty. Because once you nail that down a little bit more, then you can tailor the intervention a little bit more specifically. Yeah. And I always, again, like these are things that you can do throughout the school year that help to clarify things. But if a kid gets to the end of the school year, and if they ever at a point where they got retained or in danger of being retained, like held back, then I always say, oh, it's time for, like, they have to do a formal assessment. The school has to do a formal assessment, meaning the it's the usually the special education department, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the school is calling um, their intervention. So in a lot of Orleans peer schools, it's called like a tiered intervention, where
Mm-hmm.
they have to document that they are trying all of these things to help with your child's education, right? Again, whether that be tutoring services, whether that be some initial testing to see if there's like a learning disability, or that they're truly having something else that needs to be addressed, that's contributing to their learning difficulties. Yeah. And that's a whole another talk, but there are things,
Yeah.
504 plan, and an
IEPs.
IEP,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are things where the school psychologist or the school education diagnostic, the person who does the educational testing, really gets to sit down with the child to see what's going on. Is there any learning disabilities present? Is there any like dyslexia? Is there something that's getting in the way of them learning optimally? And then tailoring the intervention so that they're successful in school.
Wow. I mean, welcome those who are just tuning in. We'd like to remind you, welcome to Nightcap Knowledge. We have Dr. Lauren Teverbar, child and adolescent psychiatrist and pediatrician. We've had her here before. She's back. We're talking about children tonight. Like what's in the mind of a child, what's going on. Make sure you're putting your comments and questions in the comment section so we can ask and share those questions. Again, hey Tamika, what's up, Marcus? Marcus Banks is in the building tonight. I need my pan trout fried hard, please, sir. Amazing chef. So we're gonna keep these questions going. And Mac, jump in if you have any questions. Go ahead, Mac.
I was just listening, and just pulling it all in. You think about the different, I guess, the different areas. Like when you get ready to do it, looking at a diagnosis, it has to see it in a different area. Like for adults, it'd be in the professional world, social world, and but then with Tanya and with me working in, I used to work in a facility. The children you see in the facility and how you want to add more things to personal to help them, but you have a kind of a guideline in which would be similar to school. You still have certain different levels of restriction. Then you have your children or child at home, and you think about the things that you could kind of bring to help, um, straighten things out. And I was thinking about, you were saying, like, what's the difference between our era with the children? Well, we are the parents, so that's a difference that different connects. And I always talk about normalized chaos. And as a society now, we have made chaotic behavior normal. It's like when you used to hear gunshots and everybody would stop, like, oh, they shooting, and they'd get everybody's attention. Now we hear gunshots so much, we're like, oh, they shooting over there. And it's become normalized to hear certain things and to respond in a certain way. And it takes its toll on the adults. And because it takes the toll on the adults, it's gonna take the toll on the children. Um, and so when them children come to you in a school setting, they already carrying not only their weight, they're carrying the weight of whatever's going on in the household with their parent. And can be vice versa, right? That same energy cut both ways. Um, you know, um, it, and I just use example. One, my daughter just be off guard with some of the stuff that she hears some of the teachers say, and by the time she get to the house, we talk about life, space crash, and eventually talking about a carry in. So now you got this extra funk on you because of something that you've heard from another adult. We are one of the contributing factors to adding uh, to what we see with children and why they are carrying so much weight and detached. Then they have so many distractions. We added that's us too. We give them to them, right? No, society has told us our child at 5 years old is supposed to have an iPhone, an iPad, earbuds, watch, smart TV, all that, and you don't get it. Now you feel like you ain't doing what you're supposed to do because your child don't have all that. But you don't have to do that. Your child expect it because that's what you give them. But if they never started out with that, and my daughter still don't have a TV in her room, right? We don't have a TV in our room, and that's our norm. It's not the norm for the average household. Every household got a TV in every room, but that's what we don't have. So it's just we as adults has to set the tone. If not, we're going to continue to repeat the cycle with the children, and the disconnect is going to continue to grow further and further. Um, and I'm just listening, like intergenerational model. That's one of the terms we use with community organizing with Brother Hollis, and we can have folks. It's one of the things when we do man talk. When we do man talk, we have somebody in the group that's 80 years old, someone in the group that's 8 years old. The youngest person in the group controls the conversation because we all been eight. They ain't never been 80. They ain't never been 40. But we've been eight, right? And we connect the conversation to whoever is the youngest person in the room and share with them and give them hope that it might seem like right now it's the weight of the world's on your shoulder, but you can overcome it because I did it and he did it, and we're gonna be here to support you to get through that. It's just a lot. They got a whole lot going on. I couldn't be a high school student right now, not in 2023. No, I would be a dropout.
Yeah, our babies are really, really. I hate to use the word stressing, but they are, and they're carrying it in some of the most painful ways. And which was going to lead me to my next question, because I know we're coming up on. Um, I talk about Halloween. I talk about crises. I talk about trauma, and I've seen on social media where these parents have allowed a certain character to come in while the baby's taking the picture, and the baby turns around and see that image and they scream running, and it's like part of it's part of a photo session. And so I think about that and how many people think that's funny. And the first thing it does is it triggers me, because I was scared to watch Freddy Krueger growing up. I was scared to, as my cousins, we were going to turn the lights off and say Bloody Mary 3 times and all that kind of stuff. It scared me and created traumas to where there are now movies with some of these things. So when we're talking about children and trauma and rage and anger, what are some ways you feel that as community villagers we can begin to give children space and safety to speak freely how they feel? So how do we approach this generation of children with so much stress? That's the question.
Yeah. Just recognizing too that it comes from so many different areas, right? And so we can try our best, right? The first level is prevention and trying to be as proactive as we can, right? So those things like scaring your child, right? Because it's funny, your infant or your little child, because it's a trend or it's funny, right? You have to just really pause and think about that. What does that do? Like when we experience the trauma, like that makes our heart race. That makes our and we're scared, right? That makes our heart race. That makes it hard to think. That makes us tearful. That makes us fearful for our lives, right? And if we have that going on repeatedly, that's what's called PTSD, right? That develops into PTSD, and that changes how our brain functions. That changes how we develop. That changes how we live our lives, right? And so knowing that it's that serious, and that addressing the anxieties that children have, that is part of it, right? Addressing any traumas that they've experienced, right? And um, denormalizing it, right? So it's not normal that you saw and experienced the loss of several young ones or several loved ones in your young life, right? By violence or whatever the reason that the loss may have occurred, it's a loss, right? And so acknowledging that, right? Acknowledging that it is difficult to go to school in this day and age where you have the risk of school shootings, where you have the risk of extreme bullying that occurs, that is made worse by social media sometimes, right? The ability of things that happen in school, instead of 10 people seeing it, you now have hundreds and hundreds of people seeing it, right? That we are asking kids to go to school in environments where testing is so important, right? And so the anxiety that comes from having to perform at that level. um, the other anxieties that can come up are social anxieties, right? And again, this is a generational difference. We do have differences in social abilities because we had the pandemic. We had children who went through a global pandemic. It deep stabilized our lives, and we can't forget about that, right? And children who lost school time, who lost seat time, who lost their critical time of learning to interact and engage with other children. They couldn't, right, in those formative years, and so they're having anxiety, having to go back into the classroom. I'm still seeing that, even though this is like now we feel like back to normal, full school back in session. That's still very much present with us, and we still have long lasting effects to the pandemic, right? um, so we have to acknowledge it, we have to address it, we have to ask, what's going on with you, what is going on for you, what's going on around you, and be really curious again at the individual level, like, what is your story, right? Because if we don't address it from that level, we start assuming, and we start attributing negative things potentially as a reason for why a child is very anxious or acting out or be having, right, behavioral issues because of this anxiety. It's because of the anxiety, not because they're bad children, right? It's because of the sadness, not because they're bad children. Yeah.
Yeah, I go ahead, Mac. You had a question? Go ahead. Okay. I was sitting here, and the first thing I thought of yesterday, I saw my soror. Shout out to the ladies of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I saw my soror post a post that said something about parents check your child's cell phone for the following apps. And it was like Calculator Plus and all of these different apps, H something, something, something. And so, me, the first thing I do, I know my kids are adults, but I go and I research these things just to stay current of what's happening. How do you advise a parent who feels like, and of course, in the Black families we grew up, oh, you gonna give me that? I'm not asking. It was more of no. This, I'm the authority. You're the child. You're listening, and I mean, that's how we were brought up. We were reared. I feel in the best ways that our parents knew how. And so today, now ways that we can communicate with our kids with some of less of that, because you spoke about the PTSD, and Mac, you were talking when I was younger. My mom used to stop, like try to make herself stop breathing. And I would call her, and I would end up going to her room. I would never forget that. That made, still to this day, I like, if my children are asleep, my husband, I'm like leaning over to check, because that still lives with me when my mom did that to me. And I told her that one day, I said, Mama, you traumatized me. I ain't traumatized you. I raised you. So I find myself remembering that so I don't do that to my kids. So how, which leads me to the question of how do you feel, what are some ways that parents can begin to talk to their kids about the apps, sexually activities, and keeping that line of communication open without the child feeling as though the parent is being in their business, as they would say, you're in my business. So what are some ways that our parents can do that with this? Look, Mac is shaking his head. Go ahead, Mac.
Well, here's the thing about it. I was reared by my great uncle and grandmother and all them. I think part of our issue with our generation is why we don't have some of the things that our fourth generation have is certain things is not negotiable, right? There is some things like, yeah, you want to be more open to a degree for discussion, but I think, as a age group, I'm talking about 40 to 50, doesn't we don't require the same level of respect that our grandparents did. Meaning that we things that we don't think are very important, like requiring them to say yes sir, no sir, being able to talk and open their mouth without nodding their head. It's certain things that we made a norm for them and how they communicate, and it's certain things that we think is a conversation. It's not a conversation. You don't pay no bill or no phone. So if your parent requests your phone, you give it up. Now, how you can ask them to it, how it starts out, usually it depends on the response back from the child and how it escalates. Um, I think that's an issue because, again, we got to go back to structure, and discipline and structure is one of the reasons that I've seen so many children that I've known end up in a facility, locked up in jail or prison, is because they can never get that certain level of knowing, hey, I can go this far, but then not go to the point where I'm just totally disrespectful and fall off the side of the table. Um, because we talked about the other side of not traumatizing them, but also have them understanding that we are trying to protect them from the real boogeyman that's outside of the house, that's out there in the street, that's not going to negotiate with you, and helping them understand the discipline and things we want them to have so they can be productive, independent citizens. But I think that's a battle, and that's why I say certain things you just don't negotiate with.
Yeah.
This is what you do.
And that has to do with you really do have to set very clear expectations for your child, right? Especially if we're talking about the phone, right? You Most children are not even, I don't know many that are. When you get to teenagers and they start to work, that's a little bit different. But most children or young people cannot pay their phone bill on their own. And so a phone is a privilege, and there are certain rules that we have to adhere to that we're going to talk about beforehand, right? Before you get the phone, about how we're going to keep the phone, and how we're going to, because certain expectations have to be met. And there should be rules around phone use. A phone is not a 24/7 thing, right? And I always say that having phone is a double-edged sword, right? Because you love it when you have it, but you really don't like it when you don't have it. And so for parents, it can be a great tool, right? Because it's an incentive, it's a reward. You can get your phone as a reward, right? But also, if we don't meet certain rules, certain expectations that, again, we talk about beforehand, because that is, you will have run into difficulties if your child feels like everything, it's just not fair because they never really understood what they needed to do to keep the phone, and how long they're grounded from the phone, and how long, what they have to do to get the phone back. You can have those conversations advance and try to think about all the scenarios. You won't be able to think about all the scenarios, and some of them you will have to discuss as they come up. But if you can have as much of an informed conversation with the child about what the expectations are, you're going to minimize things on the back end, right? And so I tell my parents, be very clear about what are the hours of phone use, right? So phone use is what? When we get home from school? Is it, do we have to do homework first and then we get the phone? Right? Do we have phone access at night? A lot of my parents say, oh, they won't go to sleep because they stay up all night scrolling through on the phone. Okay, well, you can say, listen, I expect you to be in bed and the phone to be off. If it's not, I get the phone at night, right? And I keep it in my room, and you'll get it back in the morning, right? Um, so you have to be really clear about that, and you can, and it's okay to. We're not harming our kids by setting boundaries. In fact, we can be hurting our kids by not setting clear boundaries, because it's teaching them how to adhere to the rules, what's important to them, and teaching them the power of clear communication, right? Clear communication and expectations. Going through the phone. So again, that's an expectation that you can set. You can say, listen, for your protection, I am going to be looking and monitoring your phone, right? Because it can be dangerous to send pictures. And we talk about that. That's an important conversation to have. We're not sending any type of naked pictures or anything to anyone, right? Because that puts yourself at risk. That also child pornography. You can get charged for child pornography. You tell the reasons for why we're not doing this, but these are things that I know can be difficult as a teenager. So I'm going to expect you to adhere to the rules, but I'm going to be following up. I'm going to be looking. We're going to do phone checks, right? This is the phone that I provide to you as a privilege. And so, yes, it is your phone, and I do want to respect your privacy, but I will be checking to make sure that we're using the phone safely. And that can be an expectation. And that can look like, we'll go through the phone once a week together, and I'm going to be looking to see how things are going. And sometimes it might be a random check, right? I want you to feel comfortable communicating with your friends and all of those things, but just understand that there are going to be some checks, right? There are going to be some checks, and we're going to put some boundaries on that use. And so those are some things that in terms of the phone use, but that extends to other discipline and as well, right? Clear expectation, clear boundaries, writing it out. If you have a teenager who's one of those, or a young person who's one of those that say, you never said that. Well, we talked about it and we wrote it out. So it's here. And then the follow through, the consistency in the terms of the follow through. And if we say that this is going to happen as a consequence for if we break rules that are related to the phone, we must follow through. Must. And it's really not an option, because it's very confusing to kids to have that inconsistency. Or sometimes if they say, I'm going to get my phone taken away if I'm up at night playing on it, sometimes they take it away and sometimes they don't, right? That is very confusing for a child. And they're going to just keep doing the behavior, even though you've talked about it, and because they know there's no consistent enforcement of it. So, yeah.
Clear and concise.
Yes, clear and concise, so that there's no room for questioning. And if again and that's my grandparents and my grandma, she still tells me about this, and like in terms of, they used to have a family meeting every Sunday, right? And so family meeting was when you could all the kids could bring up all the concerns. They could bring up everything they think is not fair, anything that they think they would like to discuss, right? Because that's the time period where we get to have a conversation about things. It's still not quite a democracy, right?
Right,
But
right.
it's still like you get your feelings and your thoughts are heard, so that we can figure out a solution together, we can troubleshoot together, and then we move forward in the week with these rules set in place, right?
Right, right.
Have some voice, because it's important for your kids to have some voice, but there's still once we talk about the rules and we set the rules, they are in place until they are changed again, right? And we
Yeah.
talk about them, but caregivers, we set the rules, we set the structure, we set the boundaries, and then it's up to us to also to enforce them. And we can have conversations about those, but the rules ultimately do have to be the rules.
Yeah. Clear, concise, and consistency.
Hmm.
So it sounds like having clear communication, concise with whatever you're giving directions, directives, or conversation, and then what is it? Clear, concise, and consistency. So
Hmm.
having those conversations, like you said, every Sunday, you had those conversations with your families when you all were younger. I mean, I'm always learning something new and inspired with Nightcap Knowledge, but our mental health forum on Thursdays, I mean third Tuesdays, really just ignite me more because I feel like I want to work in the field because I always tell Mac of social work, mental wealth. So just in that area. And we just want to remind everyone again, you're listening to Dr. Lauren Tebabar, and we want to encourage and also let people know Dial 988 for Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. We can help prevent suicide. If you know anyone or your child, please make sure you dial 988. It's 24/7 free and confidential support for people in distress. So we don't want to miss the signs and I'm glad I brought that up. What are some signs that parents can look for in their kids to know when their kids they need to put some support in place for them, mental support?
Sure. So, one of the major signs can be changes in behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it, and we can break it down into just pure, if we're, especially if we're at risk for suicide, or depression or anxiety. Behavior changes can include not sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
or sleeping too much, sleeping all the time. And again, we have to distinguish it with those who are teenagers where they can sleep like 12 hours a day, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
it's a change, if we're talking like they're sleeping more hours, like two, three, more, 4 more hours or more than they normally sleep, or or they're not sleeping at all. If they're not eating, or they're eating, or they're not eating way too much. So changes in either way of their appetite. If they are more withdrawn, so they generally like to go places or engage with their friends, or are in a number of clubs at school, and they are no longer interested in doing those. They don't want to be on the football team anymore. They don't want to be in dance anymore. They don't want to go out with their friends. They want to stay in their room, and sleep, or do something else that's very isolative. That is a change. Again, it's a behavioral change for them. If you hear them, or you see them giving away things, or talking about not wanting things, or um, making some certain type of preparatory acts, self-harming. So cutting, hitting, bruising themselves. And again, there's a distinction in that. Not all cutting or self-injurious behavior is suicidal behavior. It can be a way that young people deal with their pain, to relieve pain, to distract themselves from emotional pain. But it certainly is a red flag and a sign that something else going on with them. If there's any self-harm that's going on. Some kids draw and journal, and share with other people in their lives that something is off or not going on with them. And so we should know who our kids' friends are, who they're close to, and if we're concerned, we can ask them. We get like that is not off limits to just ask. Okay, I'm a little worried about a child. How do you think, best friend? How do you think they've been doing? And you don't have to. Again, it's just a inquiry. You're being curious as to how they're doing. And of course, they're more tearful. That's an obvious
Yeah.
one. Or having more panic attacks, or again, not doing well in school. Another big red flag is a change in how they're doing academically in school. So those are
Okay.
all signs that a child needs um, more help, and maybe at risk.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's okay. And I always tell parents too, it is okay to ask specifically, have you been having any thoughts about harming yourself? Have
Mm-hmm.
you having any thoughts about wanting to be dead or not wanting to be alive anymore? That doesn't
Yeah.
make someone think about killing themselves or harming themselves if you ask them that question.
Yeah.
But it certainly allows them the space to tell you if they are.
Yeah.
I, I think there's another question we got to add in today's time. Uh, as you got to ask, do you have thoughts of hurting someone else? Like, do you have thoughts of hurting someone, at school or in the neighborhood? Because a lot of time with bullying, as you see, that person is taking it for so long, and nobody ever asks. They're like, "Hey, I know I ain't thought about hurting me." They're like, "But did you ask? Have I thought about hurting somebody else?" And then you
You're
want to know
lying.
why, and start to peel back those layers, um, because you don't know how to handle those situations. And they say tell the teacher, but then when you tell the teacher, depending on the teacher, it just makes the situation worse because nobody ever really does anything about it, and then it continues to manifest until next thing you know, it's making nightly news.
Yeah.
That's
Um, so I think those are conversations we can have, especially with so much happening with that age group, with fighting.
Yeah.
right. And another red flag too, because I've had a number of my patients and young people where this has happened. Like they've taken a knife to school, or a hammer, or some type of object that was found in their backpack. And you really have to. Why did you take it to? You have to ask. Why did you take it to school? Right. And obviously, hopefully, they don't get to that point where they take it to school. But again, those are red flags. If you have a child that's hiding things or taking things to be used as a weapon, that's a sign that something's going on. And again, a number of kids, they just don't feel comfortable. They feel like they may be viewed as weak, or that they're not handling the situation,
Mm-hmm.
that they're being picked on or being bullied. So those are other signs or subtle signs that that may be going on for them. And you have to ask multiple times, not just one time, multiple times, to get that information from them.
Well, we had some good stuff tonight, some good topics. Well, questions, conversation around our children. Parents, you need to follow Dr. Lauren Teverbar on social media. Doc, how can they follow you on social media?
I am on Facebook. It's Lauren hyphen Teverball is on Facebook, on Instagram, Juneteenth. Um, those are my main social media platforms right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Can,
We got your Lauren hyphen Teverball. And I'm not saying it right, Teverbo. How do I say it correctly?
right? Teverball.
I did Teverball.
You
I
said,
got it.
you got it. Mhm.
Ew. So I got you at Juneteenth on IG. So if you want to know more about and learn, and even just sit down, bring your family, have a conversation with Dr. Tevabal. She is amazing, as you heard tonight. We thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you are tuning in next week as we get ready. I think we're going back to our fitness, online fitness. Pray for me, hallelujah. Next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Again, we have so many events coming up uh, around Jackson, Mississippi. So make sure this on your calendar, October 12th through the 15th for Tougaloo's Alumni Weekend. Tougaloo, Eagle Queen, we love thee. Make sure you are there. Again, Dr. Teverball, we want to thank you so much for being on the show tonight. And again, you are a gem. And I've been holding on to your stuff. Pray for me. So I'm just gonna have to come to your house and put both bags in your hands of love. So thank you so much for being on. Do you have any comments, Mac? You have any comments before we get out of here?
Thank you for having me. I'm honored as always.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, let's go, y'all. Y'all know we're about to go. Let's go. Tune in next week. So we get back into our fitness on Tuesdays. Again, we thank y'all so much for tuning in to Nightcap Knowledge. I'm your girl, Tanya Boy Cannon. We have Mr. Matt, DJ George Chuck. We'll see y'all next week.